Thank you to Phoenix for sponsoring this video. We see a lot of phones every year, but it almost always starts with the latest from Samsung. They're usually one of the first out of the gate with the latest and greatest SnapDragon processor, some of the best camera hardware, and one of the longest software commitments in the industry. But not everybody needs a top-of-the-line Ultra. And with a few other phones already hitting the market featuring the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, if you're looking at your phone and considering an upgrade, I've got 5 reasons why the Samsung S23 might just be the phone for you. So let's talk about it. Ryan Haynes and I got our hands on the Galaxy S23 before launch at Samsung's Capture event, and my top 5 takeaways, along with our full review from Hainesy over on AndroidAuthority.com, were design, cameras, performance, battery, and ecosystem. So that's the TLDR, but getting into a deeper dive, design, starting with that, consistent throughout the bottom of the lineup right through the top, you get standard color options across the line no matter which model you choose. And Samsung has committed to a much more consistent design language as well. Simple cameras with not a lot of bump, and the size of the S23 feels great in the hand. It's a smaller phone, and it's definitely something that just feels comfortable compared to the Plus or the Ultra variants. In terms of durability, the S23 comes with an Armor aluminum frame and Gorilla Glass Victus 2 on the front and back. The phone also boasts an IP68 rating for water and dust resistance. Your color options are Phantom Black, Cream, Lavender, Green, which is honestly my favorite, or the Samsung exclusive Lime. Ew. Or graphite. So hopping over to the cameras, one of the most noteworthy changes to the Galaxy S23 lineup came with respect to the whopping 200 megapixel camera on the Ultra. But the 50 megapixel main shooter on the S23 is still really good. Whether it's the 200 megapixel Ultra or the 50 megapixel standard S23, the actual pictures that you'll use on social media or share with family are still binned down to 12 megapixels. So when you think about it, 50 megapixels binned down to 12 is still plenty enough. And if you want a full explainer, my buddy Harley did a great job explaining how pixel binning actually works. I'll drop that in the link in the description. But as you can see, the camera hardware on the Galaxy S23 is pretty comprehensive. And new this year versus other years, Samsung has stepped up their selfie game. They've gone to a standardized 12 megapixel selfie cam, which you'll find on all variants of S23, S23 Plus, and the Ultra series. Unlike last year's S22, which featured a smaller 10 megapixel sensor versus the S22 Ultra 40 megapixel selfie cam. Samsung told us at launch that this was a conscious effort to focus on computational photography and provide an even better experience for the end users. So how do the images stack up? Well, I took the S23 out for a walk around Vancouver, and here's how that went. Now, I might be an outlier here, but when it comes to the main camera, the 50 megapixel main sensor at 24 millimeters wide is almost too wide. The edge is still relatively sharp, but there's tons of information being taken in, and I found myself needing to step in towards my subject of my photo unless I wanted to switch up to the 10 megapixel 3x zoom telephoto, which we'll talk about in a second. But that complaint could really be made for how I feel about most image sensors these days, as 24 millimeter and then the 13 millimeter for the 12 megapixel ultra wide just seem a little bit redundant to me. Both the wide and the ultra wide maintain quite a bit of detail around the edges, but distortion is just something that you'll have to live with. As a photographer, I'm always going to be able to fall back on my 200 millimeter or 300 millimeter 2.8 lens for shooting sports and wildlife. And while I was really pleasantly surprised with just how well the Samsung handled its digital zoom, the 10 megapixel telephoto 3x zoom gets you into the tight and bright space for some nice portraits and close-up stuff. But what about something slightly out of reach? Well, at 30 times digital zoom, the images are dog water. They're just bad, no detail, grainy, and pretty well unusable. But at 10 times, you actually find a sweet spot where you won't be able to crop your images in at all, but straight out of the phone, the image is nice. I was able to retain a strong amount of detail on these turtles while they were out sunbathing, as well as the duck that was passing by. For reaching out a bit further to capture these people enjoying a walk in the park, 10 times digital zoom made a nice photo that I would gladly share on Instagram or Facebook. Okay, so I've had my hands on both the Ultra and the standard S23 now, and I can say that the Ultra, even though it has the same selfie camera as the S23 standard, it deals with the information a little bit better. And the standard S23 gives you a little bit less vibrance in not so ideal circumstances, such as the difference between having the sun behind me and being a little bit more backlit, and the processor trying to retain detail throughout the entire image instead of just getting my face. It leaves the image feeling a little bit washed out, but that's just me feeling nitpicky, obviously. And if I stop splitting hairs here, it's actually pretty good. When it comes to the video capabilities, Samsung just keeps getting better and better. You could basically vlog your day with this phone. Your main camera provides you with usable 8K footage, but at 4K, 30 or 60 FPS, that's where I found the sweet spot. Both the main and selfie cameras can shoot 4K at 30 or 60 FPS, and the mic picks up stereo sound, so it's gonna be something that you can use in a bunch of different situations.
It was on my face. Even when you got it backlit, it washes the image out just a little bit, but it's not too bad. It's actually got really good image stabilization. Holy cow. Like, you wouldn't even really be able to tell. Like, I'm walking pretty sloppy. I'm not really holding the camera super steady. It's actually holding a pretty stable image at the moment. Then we go out to ultra wide, still looks pretty good. I wonder if it'll hold that. It doesn't quite, it holds it a little bit when you're in the three times zoom in that telephoto, but it's noticeable more than I am walking, and you'll get sick if you watch that for too long. So
top that all off with the really impressive gyro EIS, and you won't find yourself struggling with shaky hands, and you'll look like a really impressive vlogger getting footage out on your adventures. And if you're gonna be out on adventures, you're definitely gonna want a case for your new phone. Phoenix cases, they're minimalist, they give you just that little bit of protection that you're gonna need, and they come in a few different colors. So check out Phoenix today. You're going to want some decent battery performance, and for that, I think that this phone is a really good option. We ended up getting around a day and a half of use with the Galaxy S23's 3,900 milliamp hour battery before we needed to charge it, and finished a day with around 40% battery remaining, only losing a handful of charge overnight. And when the battery does run out, you're faced with a familiar and slightly underwhelming set of charging standards to work with. The Galaxy S23 still features just 25 watts of wired charging, while its Galaxy S23 Plus and Galaxy S23 Ultra siblings bump up to 45 watt speed. In our experience, it takes just about 80 minutes to fill the 3,900 milliamp hour cell using a USB power delivery brick. In fairness though, that's around 20 minutes faster than an iPhone 14 and the Pixel 7. But it's still a disappointment when you consider that a compatible plug can top up the Galaxy S23 Ultra's beefy 5,000 milliamp hour cell in under an hour. When it comes to performance and bang for your buck, obviously the vanilla Galaxy S23 doesn't have its eyes set on the Galaxy-loving power users. That title belongs to the ultra expensive Galaxy S23 Ultra. But that doesn't mean that the Galaxy S23 can't still give you anything more than average. There are still performance marks to be upheld, especially when you're asking $799 US for a smartphone. Qualcomm's SnapDragon 8 Gen 2 for Galaxy chipset gives the S23 a little extra punch compared to last year's Galaxy S22. Across Geekbench 6, 3D Mark, and PC Mark, the S23 handled itself well and backs up the idea that the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 for Galaxy is actually something pretty special. Versus the S22, it posted a 35% increase in single-core Geekbench 6 performance and a 52% bump in multi-core performance. That's pretty impressive, and it shows just how much difference an extra performance core can really make. Like we said, this phone isn't supposed to be the power user's delight. That is the Ultra's job. But you can pack this thing up with a 256 gig UFS 4.0 version and 8 gigs of memory, This phone makes perfect sense for anyone looking for a new daily driver. What doesn't make sense is the 128 gig UFS 3.1 $799 version. The S23 Plus starts at 256 gigs, same with the S23 Ultra, but for whatever reason, they decided that people still needed a 128 gig slightly lower end storage version. But for just $60 more, you can pick up the $859 USD 256 gig UFS 4.0 version with the same 8 gigs of RAM. My advice? Just go for the extra big version there. Go for the $60. It just makes sense. And what really makes sense about what Samsung's doing this year is their ecosystem. Haynes' review briefly goes over the ecosystem, and he states that Samsung truly has a galaxy at its disposal. Samsung is going after Apple's ecosystem crowd in a big way, thanks to an ever-growing stable of wearables, smartphones, earbuds, and Windows laptops. Oh, and tablets as well, and Chromebooks. Even better, all Samsung's products link together through a series of playback and file sharing apps. And getting set up is actually really easy. It's easier than ever. And that's exactly something that I found exciting about all of the S23 and Book 3 products from this year's launch. So not specific to just the standard S23, but definitely still worth talking about. I sat down at the content capture and watched the phone interact with their Book 3 Ultra and transfer images seamlessly over the laptop, all while using the Tab S8 Ultra as a secondary display, which has enough horsepower all on its own as well. Now hold up. Am I telling you to go out and buy all of these things just because? No, I mean, you're not some Apple fanboy. But if you do need one or two or all of those pieces, it really is nice just to see what can be done and how they can interact. And when you're running a crispy signature Samsung SnapDragon 8 Gen 2, the processing possibilities and chances to change just how you compute, it keeps growing. And you get that compatibility from the bottom of the lineup all the way up to the top, making an argument for skipping the Ultra and confidently reaching for just the standard Galaxy S23. Overall, it's some of the best bang for your buck, featuring a stunning camera array, plenty of battery to keep you juiced up all day, and a design that just feels so much more fluid. You're not missing out on much by going for the much more handy Samsung Galaxy S23 standard. But folks, if you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. Please keep supporting the community by giving this video a thumbs up, drop us a comment below and say hi, and make sure that you're subscribed so you don't miss out on the next one. But until next time guys, I'm Ryan from Authority Media, be kind, and we'll see you on the next one.